All right, friends. Now, so we just calculated our mean based off of our group data. I want to make sure there's a very, very common phrase that describes the type of mean we just took, and it's called a weighted mean. It's called a weighted average or a weighted mean. And the deal with weighted means, you have to use them whenever your data is given to you in a grouped frequency setting, like we just saw with the keys and like we just saw with that Excel demonstration. So you have to use this. You have to use this method. And by this method, I mean the one that Richie walked us through. When your data is grouped. Because it's the only way you maintain any precision that you inadvertently lose by grouping the data. That's the problem. You're going to lose. Now, I'm putting as a caveat, remember that blue bell curve that was in the front of that Excel spreadsheet? That wasn't really grouped data, correct? It was really a dot plot, it was really raw data. So you could go ahead and do that either way. Either add them all up and divide by blah, or do it this way. You could very easily do this calculation with that, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 20 of the frequencies and multiplying that. Matter of fact, that's what I was having the Excel do in that chart. But if you have grouped data where you lose some of that precision, you have to do it this way to maintain whatever's left. Now, the reason I get so excited about weighted means is because they permeate every bit of this course. But that's not a really good reason to get excited about it, because they permeate the course. They permeate your lives. How many of you guys drove here today? Would you believe a weighted mean had something to do with that? Probably in more than one way. Do you have any idea how a weighted mean had something to do with you driving here today?
Miles per gallon.
I wasn't thinking about that, probably. If you want to figure out your average miles per gallon usage, you'd have to figure out the frequency of time. Actually, you're into like 3 or 4 different ways it probably tied in. Average fuel economy. Average fuel economy, you'd have to break it into certain elements of your driving style and wait if you're, and then you back off and go really slowly. You might say, well, average, add up the times you went, or the times you're sitting still, call it good, divide it by 2. Can't do that. What if you were only burned when you didn't see police, and you pulled off when you did see police? Well, assuming that you saw police half the time, that would be okay to divide by 2, but you probably didn't. So that's what I wasn't thinking about that. That's good though. Yeah. Average speed is another one. If you're going to think of that, you said average miles per gallon. How fast are you going on average? Well, total distance over total time. But you can also average instantaneous pictures of that by using a weighted average. I was thinking, was something less directly tied to driving and more tied to the legality of driving. How much you pay for car insurance is directly tied to a weighted average. How much do you pay for car insurance? Too much.
Yes.
Too much, right? Of course too much. It always seems like it's too much. Why do 18-year-old boys pay so much for car insurance?
They get more reps, more...
They do? I got 0 reps when I was 18, sir. I resent that comment.
Most of the rest of them.
Boom! The average 18-year-old boy, now here we go, right? The average 18-year-old boy is going to have more accidents than the average 24-year-old. What is an average 18-year-old? Hell if I know, but I know that an 18-year-old boy on average has more wrecks than an average 24-year-old. And I don't even care what an average 24-year-old looks, talks, sounds, looks like. But I know statistically they're going to get in more wrecks, which means they're going to cost my company more, which means I have to weight their premium with that likelihood. So you've got the premium payments and the likelihood of a wreck or an accident or something like that. We're playing an actuary right now, yeah? Now that's a very, very brief overview. I'm going to have you guys actually play actuary later in this course, where I give you the chance of me dying within the year, me becoming disabled, unable to work within the year, well maybe dismembered, or the chance of me being just fine through the year. And you're going to calculate how much my life insurance should be, based off of those statistics. I mean, or parameters, actually, more like parameters than statistics.
Including rock climbing?
Yeah, that's part of it. Interesting, great that you bring that up. We just switched life insurance plans about a year ago. And they came and asked us a bunch of questions, and because I'm a Boy Scout, I can't lie. Do you engage in any hazardous activities? And I say, no. And they say, well, rock climbing? I'm like, yes. They said, we just asked if you engage in any... I was like, rock climbing isn't hazardous. I said, more people are killed every year being kicked by horses than by rock climbing. And the guy looks at me like I have 3 heads. And that's true. More people die getting kicked by horses every year than by rock climbing.
But average.
What else are you gonna look at? I mean, he's basing his on an average, so I'm basing my answer on an average. I'm an amazingly safe rock climber. I back everything up triple hit, if not more. We use any equipment that looks even remotely suspect gets retired. I'm not one of those maniacs free soloing 500 feet up in the air. None of you are maniacs who free soloists, I apologize for calling you maniacs. I'm incredibly safe. I use my own protection in the rock, that's all kept up to code. I check bolts, I clean bolts at Smith. But their definition of rock climbing called it inherently hazardous because it was a risk in their book. I mean, driving a car is riskier statistically. Please, Rory!
Like all your stats knowledge, is it possible for you to actually talk down premiums on your insurance?
No, because as soon as I said I was a rock climber, I went into that bin over there. Now, I did correct their document. They were using terms incorrectly. They used terms like sport climbing and free climbing. And their definition of sport climbing was any kind of climbing that uses protection and a rope. And their definition of free climbing was free soloing, which means not using a rope. That's false. Free climbing means not hanging on the rope to get yourself up a climb. You can use a rope for protection if you fall. Free soloing is the term when you see people up at Smith not climbing with ropes. Say a prayer for them, first of all. But that's free. So when they said we were sport climbers and free climbers, they got confused. He's like, you can't be both. I'm like, you can. If you're clipping bolts and not falling on the rope, then you're sport climbing and you're free climbing. So he fixed the document. He sent it back to headquarters. They fixed the document because of that. But the fact that we're having the discussion put me in the more expensive life insurance category. But historically, I was in the low end of that because we haven't had accidents before. In all the time, I've been climbing for 20 plus years. I've gotten one inflamed bursa on my bursa sac on my elbow once. I bumped a climb at Smith and this thing swallowed like a grapefruit. What the hell happened? Something on the rock, I guess. That's it. Never broken anything, knock on wood. I've seen injuries happen. I've never seen anybody die climbing. It happens. Somebody dies at Smith every couple of years. But I mean, think about the thousands of ascents that go on for the one death. That's the thing. It's very easy to talk about a plane that goes down. Oh my God, the plane crashed. 200 people aboard died. This is an awful, awful, awful event. And it is. I'm not saying it's not. I am saying that this year, more people are going to die riding their skateboard down the streets of major urban centers than are going to die in airplanes. But you don't hear about those in the news because they don't die 200 at a time usually. I mean, that's the fact of it. I have to speak statistically, Richie, because my doctor laughs when I say something like that. When he says rock climbing's risky, I'm like, here we go again. No, it's not, and here's why. Well, you're speaking statistically. But should I rather speak anecdotally? Because that works too. I'm not dead. You know, so I mean, it's just you have to because they're speaking. Whenever a doctor tells you take this vitamin supplement, that doesn't mean it's gonna work for you. It means it works on average for people that take it. So they're using statistics in one side, but as soon as I try to counter with another one, they're using statistics. Okay, sorry, I think. Anyway, point being. Thank you for that. That was an awesome thing to say, but it's an important thing to also discuss. You have to speak that way, because that's where the truth lies. The truth revert. You ever heard of the phrase regression to the mean? Regression to the mean? I think I mentioned on the very first day of class how as soon as a sports star is on Sports Illustrated, usually the next week something goes wrong and they screw up somehow. Did we talk about that a little bit? Why? I didn't mention that on the first day or the second day. So there's a theory that as soon as an athlete is on the cover of Sports Illustrated, within a week or two or a game or two, they start screwing up. There's a perfectly acceptable statistical reason for that. It's called regression to the mean. When does somebody get on the cover of Sports Illustrated?
When they're at the top.
When they're at their top, not when they're at their average. When they're at their top. What's most likely going to happen if they're at the top? Are they going to stay there? Not unless their average is shifted up. Most likely they're going to regress back to what they're typically capable of. That's kind of the catch. That's kind of the catch. Does that make sense? You guys buying that? All right, good. All right. So anyway, averages are good, but the word long-term kind of needs to kick in too. It's a long-term average. So speaking of which, I'm going to talk about that too. I want to do one more example of a weighted average so you can see. We just talked about how your life insurance plan applies to you, or insurance in general. We'll come back to that. That requires a few more pieces of the puzzle. We're not quite there yet. But there is one you can handle right now, and that's your GPA. GPA is grade point average. So that is a perfect example of an average because it impacts you guys, some more than others. So let's make up a student. What classes is our student taking?
CIS 120.
CIS 120. How'd they do?
C minus.
C minus. Holy crap. What else did they take?
A and B.
A and B. What did they get? A and B got an A. Love it. What else did we take? What else did forestry?
Or natural resources.
Natural resources. What do we get?
Yeah.
It's an average.
Make it an average of C. There's an old joke about two statisticians hunting in the woods for a bear. Three statisticians hunting in the woods for a bear. The first one pops up, they see a bear, they pop up 5 feet to the right. Second one pops up 5 feet to the left. Third one jumps up, we got him! Terrible joke, they say it was a good joke. One more class, total fit. Greatest one credit class you'll ever take, Austin knows. And let's say you get a B minus in that because you skipped a couple classes and didn't make them up. Okay. What's this student's GPA? Going like this, right? Going like this. So what's missing?
The numbers.
First of all, numbers, good. There's no number. Your GPA comes between a 0 and a 4.
Yeah.
And that's missing. So the first thing we probably should do is turn these into their numerical values. Let's start with that, yes? So in case you don't know how this magical system works, it's a 4-point scale where an F is a 0 and an A is a 4. So that A actually has I forget what it's called, but it's worth 4. This A minus is a third below that. It's going to be a 3.67. Every time you drop one, so a B plus would then be a 3.33, and then a B would be a 3 even. A B minus is going to be a 2.67. Fair enough. A C plus would be a 2.33. A C is a 2. A C minus is a 1.67. This is why I only give pluses on your transcripts. Like in my class, I keep track of where you are in the range of values from like 90 to, or I can't do an A plus, but like in a B range, 80 to 90. If you fall in 87 or above, I'll give you a B plus, but I won't give you a B minus if you're in 83 because it only hurts your GPA. It pisses me off. So, plus you'll see why I don't really like this. I don't like this system for a number of reasons. We'll get back to that momentarily. Okay, ready so far? What's their GPA? 3.0. How we get it? Add them, divide by 4. Love it. Unfortunately, we can't do that.
No.
We can't do that, unfortunately. Why can't we do that?
Because the total fit's only 1 credit, and like the CIS 120 or AMP is 4 credits.
I would have no problem with that, Nathan, if you were taking 4, say 3 credit classes, or 4 4-credit classes, or 4 2-credit classes, or 4 1-credit classes. Then you can totally do it. Because they're all weighted the same, and they're essentially raw data at that point. The problem, as Carolyn, this is your data. Nathan, you nailed that as data. I'm going to pull this over here. So your data for your grades is definitely 1.67, it's definitely 4, it's definitely 3.67, and it's definitely 2.67. That's all correct. But the problem is, there's also an kind of unknown frequency lurking in there. And the frequency lives in how many credits each class is worth in your transcript. So let's put them in. What's CIS 120? Is that 4?
4.
That's a 4. What's A&P?
4.
That's 4. Natural resources?
4.
Is that 4? Cool. Total fit? A whopping 1. A whopping 1. Okay? Hardest 1 credit you'll ever take in your life either. So now what you have to do is you have to calculate it using Ritchie's method. Because now it's essentially the same as you didn't really get 1.67, you got 4 of them. You didn't get 1 of 4, you got 4 4s. You didn't get 1.367, you got 4. You did get 2.67. You have to account for all of that. Because your total credits this term were 13, not 4. Not 4. You didn't take 4 credits, you took 13 credits. And the classes with the higher number of credits, allegedly, they're supposed to indicate how much effort you put into the class. I think that's the academic history of it. I think it's been bastardized because certain classes are much harder than their credits allow for. Calculus, for example, if you take calculus at COCC, I think you get 4 credits for that, and it's literally a 5-credit class. What's that?
You should get 10.
You should get 10. Wait, you should get more than 4. I'll give you that. So, cool. And then some schools, for example, teach 243. What we do in 243 plus about a third of 244. And they're given 4 credits for that. And that seems unfair. You're cramming more. Well, first of all, it's unfair because you're cramming instead of understanding. but also because you've gotten more stuff. It almost seems like you should get more credits for more stuff. I don't know. I mean, I got issues with the system anyway. Okay, so Richie's, here we go. X times F's. What do we get?
6.68.
That's, thank you for saving me the 6.68, yeah. If you don't mind saving me the time, go ahead. That's 16, I can do that one. 12 and, what is that, 14.68?
Yep.
Is that right? And this one's going to be between those two, so let me see if I can do that. 8, 4, 10.68? Is that right?
No.
Oh, it's 1! I thought
Hello.
that was 4. 2.67. I thought it was 4 again. I was getting all excited. Math.
Do math.
Said it doesn't work. Okay. So these, I think these used to be called quality points back in the day. But they're not called that anymore, I don't think. But maybe they are. But add them up.
40.03.
Thank you. 40.03. Thank you, Lauren. Sum of the x times f's is 40.03. That's a rounding error. The 03 is actually because they truncate the decimals. Another reason I hate the plus and minus system. You're actually underestimated on the pluses and overestimated on the minuses. You get more negative for the minus and less positive for the plus. Anyway, GPA for the student?
3.08.
Boom! Sum of the XFs over sum of the Fs. 40.03 over 13. And it was 3.08. Thank you. It's amazing. I had the other class come up with an alternate student. There was a 3.07 last period. Great. They're not usually that close. Now you think about that. 3.07. How can it be so low when you have 2 A's and a C? And you're thinking to yourself, 2 A's and a C. Why isn't it closer to like a middle B versus a low B? And I think it's because all those minuses you guys gave the student. All those little minuses kind of add up and pull them a little bit on the south side of it. I guess. The total fit B really isn't doing a whole lot of anything in the overall scheme of things. I mean, here's what's, Lauren, your question on the 56 keys from before, here's where the meat of what's going on is going on. So you can see that the meat of what's going on is still in the A's, but this is enough to pull a little bit further south. So, interesting. So GPA, one more way that weighted means infiltrate your lives. Trinity, go!
So did you add up the column F and then add up, what happened?
I added up this guy to get 13. Lauren added up this guy to get that.
Right,
And then we
okay.
divided that by that to get our
You
GPA.
multiply for, okay.
Yeah, GPA. Is GPA fair? Your opinion?
No.
No! Tell me why no!
I don't think it's an accurate representation of how much I'm learning.
I agree with that, Rachel. I do agree with that.
Crap, so.
It's crap. And furthermore, it's crap. I like that. I like that very much. Good. How, can you think of any other way of doing it besides GPA? I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Oh, pass fail, like a 1 or a 0.
Sure. Ooh, base it on your work, not on.
Well, okay. Yes. Do you know what we don't do that?
High pass rating though.
That's true. That's
Pass
true.
Like 85 for that to actually work.
And it depends on how you define pass.
Yeah.
That's something else, right?
High, though?
Right. If you keep this system in place and call a pass anything at 75% or higher, you've pretty much established what the rate's going to be right there. You'd have to redefine what a pass is. I think we can live comfortably with that idea. It'll never happen, I don't think, for a number of reasons, but I think that they can come to a fruition, I think. Sherry, go ahead.
Well, it's essentially pass-fail. You either get a degree or you don't.
Oh, okay, so the end result is a 1 or 0.
It really does.
Yeah.
The end result is a 1 or 0. Okay, I buy that. And I like that it's a more holistic look because you're looking at any one particular grade not burying you because you can make it up. This is how I designed my grading system, FYI. This is why you have like 18 or 20 or 30 things so that one thing can't possibly bury you. I'm looking for a trend versus an outlier. Go ahead, Lauren.
I said that's not necessarily true that you get a degree or don't.
Okay.
Some of us have that limit. Like I can't have anything less than a 3.67 to get into my program, and from then on, I have to keep above that in order to get my degree or not.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily.
And conversely, may I add to that? My brother-in-law, no, wrong, one of my friends from back east, he was in a program at CU, Boulder. He had to have a certain GPA to get in, and for some asinine reason, he wanted to get out of the program because he failed too many classes. He couldn't get out of the program until he got his GPA back up to that GPA. It was the most asinine thing I've ever heard. He took another year.
You can't just quit?
No. They would keep finding him if he just quit. It's like, you suck, but you gotta get better before you can leave. It's the weirdest freaking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Do you think that was because for their statistics, they didn't want to announce that they had people?
Can you hold that question for like 20 minutes? Because I have an answer, I have a fun answer for that one, if you don't mind, Sarah. Remind me if I don't talk about Indiana State University, okay? Because it ties in better at the end, I think, but because I don't have an answer for your particular question, I got a parallel question. Good? All right, thanks, sister. So, yes, I agree that GPA can be a little bit unfair. It's still around. I think it's a remnant of the old British. It's a British system. This is why you guys take final exams. We're not going to take a final exam here, technically speaking. But that's older from the British system. British system. You had a midterm and you had a final, or you had one final assessment all term.
Yep.
For some reason, that has carried over to us, even though we don't do anything else like the Brits. We drive on the wrong side of the road. We don't have tea at 4 o'clock. I mean, I don't know. So much of this is archaic, and I'm trying to push past that a little bit. But anyway, speaking of that, let's get back into this. Now, we have learned really only 3 things over the past couple days, which I'm stoked about. And if you think about it, it's one thing. Center, measures of center. What I want to do now is, I want to make sure you guys can kind of understand when to do each, or which are applicable when. So what I've got here, let's start and stop this again.